Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here today to present the chart of Evangeline Adams. So, just to explain who she is, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with her, she actually wrote a book called The Principles of Astrology, where definitely she did this book in conjunction with Crowley. Crowley was actually a ghostwriter for her. So we don't really know how many books of hers he was actually involved in. But it was obvious they knew each other. She was a little bit older, and she was also a part of, uh, I want to say, some of the organizational stuff that he was. But I think that she was, just like Lady Frida Harris was someone he really worked with the Thoth deck. I think that Evangeline Adams is someone that he really worked with for astrology. And these were things that he needed when he was an initiate of the Golden Dawn. So these were subject matters that are a part of, well, I don't even know if I can say his name anymore, but the author of this huge, huge book called The Golden Dawn, and it's for the initiates. Anyway, I wanted to look at her because historically she has value as well. She was actually arrested 3 times in the early 1900s because fortune telling was considered illegal. And she was brought before the judge. I think this was the third and final time. And I guess he was curious, so he asked her, what can you tell me about myself or about my wife that you see in my chart? I don't know. He tried to mess her up in a way that he thought she would fail. She did not. But I always say this, please be careful when you do that to an astrologer. Someone actually did it to me once, and where they kind of questioned me on something, and I just nailed them. I mean, nailed them. Just like she did to the judge, because she told the judge that when they had sex, the whole neighborhood knew. I don't think that's something he wanted out in his courtroom, which is why it's very unwise sometimes to corner an astrologer in that way, because there's a lot of things when we're reading charts that we don't say, because it's not part of it's not relevant. But if you were to really prod someone, they could probably tell you things that were rather embarrassing. So don't do it. I think her whole story is a case of don't do this. And needless to say, she was never arrested again. And she was a profound astrologer. And one of the reasons I like doing these charts, Evangeline Adams and Aleister Crowley, okay, not the last one I did because for some reason, here we go again. And I know how to say this, but I have to be in the right mood. But anyway, I didn't have a time for her chart, which I thought was really kind of strange because she was not someone who I think would have been new to astrology. I think that astrology was probably somewhere around her world based in some of the things that were going on. But true to many people born in the 1800s, we don't always get a good time. But we did with Evangeline Adams. So like Aleister Crowley, these were really good astrologers, and they left us with times for their charts. So to me, that makes the charts worth looking at. And I thought, well, you know what? She really was a comrade of Aleister Crowley's. Though realize that Evangeline Adams is a New York, well, she's born in New Jersey, but she's here, United States. Aleister Crowley, he travels the world extensively, but he's English, and he spends his time there, which is another thing that was really different than Madame Helen. I'm going to call her Madame Helen. So they're Americans. Well, she wasn't an American, but she did end up spending a lot of time and creating a lot in New York. And Evangeline Adams is actually from that area. So I thought that was really interesting as well. It's so cool that these people, some of them were so international already in the early 1900s. I think of us as being very international now because we have the internet, and that has really brought the world together in a way, making the world a much smaller place. But it's really interesting for me to see that some of these people with money in particular, like Aleister Crowley, they did actually travel the world. They did become more international. So I thought that was really cool. Anyway, let's look at her chart because it's really, really interesting. And I got a couple of really good notes on it. So let's check it out. So here we have her chart. And this is, in the words of my teacher that I'm studying with right now, Gary, the pizza pie chart. Only it's interesting because he's one of the developers of this program. It doesn't look at all like a pizza pie because none of the lines are straight. His other program, though, it does come up straight. But here, no. Okay. And a lot of it, too, is because I have a lot of stuff on here. But I want to talk about a couple of things about Evangeline. Um, Her companion was a woman. And I'm not going to say that she was a part of the LGBT plus community or whatever, but she might have been. Okay. I think that she was even engaged and everything, but those things didn't come out to be, and my feeling is she might have been gay. And so that's kind of really, in a way, that's kind of cool because in the world she was in, would have been really wow. Just like Crowley being, bisexual today would mean nothing. Who cares, right? But we're going back 100 years plus, and I think those things were not as acceptable. The religious factor, as somebody pointed out, I think it was Gary again, especially as 1700s, they're still coming off and they're reeling off of this like major religion thing, okay? And so no, those things were kind of kept in the closet. I don't think it was too much in the closet because, like I say, the writings literally tell you that she had a female companion. One of the things I really loved about her chart, and we'll go right to it, is right here at the Ascendant, there's a couple of things that I found really interesting. First of all, her 8:30 time. She was born at 8:30 in New Jersey, Jersey City. Actually, a place that I've spent some time in, which is really interesting. We used to park in Jersey City, take the PATH train to New York when I was living in a slightly different place in Pennsylvania. So when I saw Jersey City, I was like, whoa, wow, I'm familiar with that. The 8:30 time period, if you've ever seen pictures of her, really fits because it's a Pisces rising, and she really, to me, really does look like a Pisces. And it's 22 degrees, so it's really in there. So I was like, wow, I think this must be a really good time because to me, she has the face of a Pisces rising. What's really interesting about this is you see this asteroid right here, this weird M with the, it's a Scorpio, fancy Scorpio sign, if you ask me. But I chose this symbol for Medusa. And that means that even though she has this real softness about her, and she really does, she could probably stare you down and had a death look, okay? Like, wow, okay? Because Medusa. So I think that she had a look that maybe you don't want to cross her, okay? Let it be warning to that judge, right? I liked a couple of things about this. There's a lot I like about this chart. Who am I kidding? I like the fact that she has Venus right on the cusp of the ascendant. And, again, it's in the 12th. So it's kind of a hidden aspect, but it's, when the Venus is in the 12th house, that's like true, like that's like love at all of its depths. That's like the absolute of in my opinion when it falls in the 12th house, and hers does, and it's in Pisces, the 12th sign. Wow, that's a wow. It's almost a spiritual thing. Okay. And her spirituality is also in the 12th, which I find interesting, which is that Jupiter. And it's literally about a degree, a little more than a degree away from this Venus. So this is somebody who really knew how to have a good time. Although, again, nothing's done out in the bigger world. And with the South Node, with Hygeia and they're only about a degree apart. No, they're not even a degree apart. They're not even a half a degree apart. It makes me wonder if she wasn't oppressed by some of the standards of those times. And Admetus being there, that lineup with Mercury, Admetus, and then these two are like tight, really does kind of give you an idea, and the 12th house sun, that a lot of her life was lived in that 12th house. And she did it for the sake of her own well being and her own good, her own health, if you will, mental and otherwise. But also, the work she did was not work. I mean, when she was doing her astrology work, yes, you see clients, but you also are doing a lot of the research in the background. So that's very apparent in this chart. Um, I I also like the Eros and the at the midheaven, the Eros with the Eos. Okay, Eros and Eos. So we've got this heart pierced through, and then we've got the broken arrow, and and then not far at the Aries point, you've got Lilith, and that again, I think, does tell us that she preferred to be with women, or how do I say this? She There was confusion in her lust, her sex life. Okay, so the whole thing is scattered, and maybe also too the way people looked at her. Okay, Bully is up there with Hopi, having to be very territorial, boundaries. It does affect her work, keeping a distance. Work is also retrograde, so it's, that whole, once again, not working as where it's obvious. So again, I think that and then this, Ergon. How could I forget all that? All of this is in here. That's Abundantia, that A, and it's conjuncting Aragon, which is could have been seen by people that there was aspects of her life that were self-destructive, dealing with that confusion, or what would be seen as confused energy with regards to her, what turns her on in life. That's what Eros is. What turns you on? I mean, we could look at it in health as the heart or the reproductive organs. So it has a really big role in medical astrology, but it also has a role in what we're doing now. I like to call counseling astrology, although she's dead, she's not really looking for me to counsel her. But I see that, and I see this gender thing at the Aries point, that Lilith, that triangular rejection, being accepted or rejected concept is very huge in her chart, as that's where the Aries point, the cardinal axis, as they refer to it in Uranian, it sits right there. So not far from the midheaven itself. So, okay, other things that are really important to point out here: the opposition between the sun and the moon. Here's the sun, the reluctant leader. Here's the moon, expecting loyalty. Okay. Mars is not opposite the moon. Okay, I would never go that far. But it is in somewhat of a play to the sun. And again, making me wonder, this is an active person, but and she was in her own right prolific. We'll get to that. But I do feel that there could have also been some anger issues, and it could be stemming from initially the moon opposite sun dilemma. Okay, because the moon is only 2 degrees from an exact opposition to that. Little more than 2 degrees, not quite 2.5. So Uranians would still really look at this. And the fact that the moon is in the sixth, which represents the work, along with Poseidon and the North Node, it was her work, her day to day activities, her work. I can really read this chart because this is a good time. And the work is literally opposite. And remember that the sun falls in the 12th house. So, she had to work with people, but the sun was somebody who probably preferred being alone, working alone. Okay? Because of the 12th house concept, okay? That whole isolation concept. So the whole work thing probably was, something that pulled her out a little bit from that 12th house. I like the Hades Mars. No, I don't think she was involved in nefarious activities or destructive activities. I think she was involved in research, a lot of research, because she wrote books. And I believe that the Hades, is a lot about the details. She was a detail-oriented person. I would have been probably, well, also my Mercury falls in there. I probably would have loved her astrology or her approach to her work as an astrologer. Isn't it funny? It does, my Mercury really does fall in there with a lot of other stuff because I have a big T square there. But it's real interesting that I find her about as interesting as I do Crowley. So I do want to qualify that. I've read his books. I've read Diary of Drug Fiend. Book 4. I did have to get rid of a whole bunch of books. Unfortunately, a lot of his recently when I had to downsize my office. But I did own and still own the Thoth deck. And so Crowley's a great figure for me. But I think because of the charts, the connections of planets, I really gravitate toward her more. And maybe because she was infamous for doing, in my opinion, something really good and forward reaching, whereas I think, his infamy comes from some of the stuff that was literally destructive to him. Now, she also has this destruction concept, but it's in the personal life. And I think it goes back to her sexuality. Also, probably not, her family wasn't thrilled with it. And I love this. The Zeus, creativity, is the reason why she has abundance. It's why she does well in life financially. She's creative, and I think that's really helpful in this chart. And I think that she transforms her value with the Pluto in that second house. So in other words, I don't know, I'd have to go look, but I think that the money aspect of her life was to go through those transformations. And with Volcanus 7 degrees away. There again, I wouldn't really call that an aspect, but I would tell you that her questioning. So let's look at what could be a midpoint here. Her questioning of things, her pressing on things, her pushing the envelope, because you really need to do that, Volcanus, to the Sphinx, that's right here, could transform her ultimately. It's a little wiggle in there, but it could be like a midpoint of sorts, which I thought was pretty interesting. Another really interesting concept, and I find it interesting because I actually have something there as well, something very different. But she's got moon like on the cut, another moon. I'm sorry, the Saturn on like the the cusp here of the ninth house. So you think of what is Saturn? Well, you know, it could be institution, like when you think of the institution like the hospital, it's over here. But this is like politics, which is, again, remember, she's arrested 3 times. This is also legal stuff. It is a house, and she did well. She did fine in all of those things. Um, I do believe that with Saturn literally in its own house, the Jupiter house, that did show signs of, you know, she probably had some issues with the law, but she was able to overcome them, which I think is kind of telling right there. And you know, here's another area, Amor, okay, Amor Saturn. She's very limited, and she probably was a tough person to be in a relationship with. Okay, and more is boundaries. I love you, but you can't do that. I love you, but that is not acceptable. And so it's really interesting because of that Saturn. So she has such a great, interesting, and again, there are a lot of similarities to my own chart. So when I look at her chart, I can see where her and I have so many similarities, and that's probably why I gravitate to her. And I think that that would be true if you could find the chart of people that you really gravitate to, that you find really interesting. You might find that you have a lot of connections with them as well. So she's born in February 8th of 1868. I believe she dies in 1932. Yeah, because Crowley lives to be 47, but he was born about 10 years after her. I think it's like 8 years after her. And it's funny how they kind of have a similar, you know, she dies in 32. He lives a little bit longer, but it's really interesting, those parallels as well when I looked at the charts. So here's a woman who's very highly focused, a little bit distant because she is so goal oriented, so focused. I also like the sextile to the moon. It's wide, wide, wide. But I think that she was happy working. Well, here's a repeated theme. That's a wide orb. So then I look and I remind myself, oh yeah, the moon's in the 6th house. This is a woman who did feel comfortable emotionally working, being of service. 6th house. So, and I love that I can do that with her chart because I have a good time. Okay. I can't get over that. You know, that I think that was it. And then I want to go to the sun axis, but I want to make sure, because I know me, you know, I'll go back. I think she was addicted, however, to taking risks. 11th house. We have a Bacchus within 3 minutes, conjunct, see where my little thingy is, conjunct Icarus. That's awesome. To me, that's very awesome. She did take risks. She was an astrologer when fortune telling was illegal. It was her goal. There was victory there for her too. About, I'm going to say a degree and 2 minutes away. No, less than a degree by 2 minutes. I said it wrong. So that's so interesting that that's in her chart. 11th house, yay! Not just the Saturn. Okay, so let's talk about this for 1 second. One of the impressions that I've been getting lately as an astrologer, I've been an astrologer and I've been looking, I'm not an intellectual astrologer, despite the fact that I do this YouTube channel. I'm actually a practicing astrologer. I actually do the work, meaning I have a clientele, I do charts for people. That's what I do. I haven't written any, I'm writing my first article for a group right now. It's in edit, first edit. So we have a ways to go till it even get to her. But the, with that said, okay, that's as a practicing astrologer, I can tell you that one of the things I look for is repeatable themes. It's critical. I don't just go in there and say, oh, yeah, that's Saturn. That's the reason why she got out because Saturn, Jupiter. No, there's got to be lots and lots that talk about particularly that case, which is famous or infamous, depending on how you want to look at it. And so there has to be repeat within the actual chart. So when I'm working with a client, I might really focus hard on those repeatable themes, whether I'm doing a projected solar return for the year ahead. I do a lot of those, actually, cornerstone of my business. Or lunar returns. When people get into things, we'll do lunar returns for a while and try to follow the path of whatever's going on. There's repeatable themes in every single chart. The chart repeats because there are things that are highlighted. And you want to always start there as an astrologer. So I thought seeing the victory with that Bacchus, with that Icarus, was another confirmation that this is a person who bucks the system. Not just because she prefers women over men in terms of partners, but because she's an astrologer during a time when it's against the law. It was actually cases in an area where I was growing up that I was an astrologer at a very young age. And I remember, and this is going back many years, was first doing astrology, and then they actually did try to arrest somebody. And I don't think we had laws against it, which is interesting because I live in PA. But I don't know what the problem was or whatever, but she was back in business, so it didn't, again, astrology might be considered fortune telling because you can do predictions with it, but it is not, and I repeat this, it is not a belief system. This astrology is going to play out whether you believe it or not. I don't have to study astrology. My life is still going to take on the turns that it was going to take. I just like being forewarned. I like kind of knowing ahead of time and being able to guide people when something does come up. Because these charts are going to play out no matter what. It is not a belief system. And believe me, I live in a very religious area, and I have to make that statement sometimes, not as much as I used to, but I just did it again recently. Ran into somebody where I had to go, She goes, you believe this? Believe in this? Oh, no. This is not a belief system. This is a math and science application. So she obviously felt the same way. She went out in the world and did something about it. She was fearless. And there goes that Mars again. Okay, so Mars, her Mars is used in, it's in such a way. Now it's a wide orb, but it's like used in the service of people, which is what I always thought about my own astrology. I just want to help people. That's why I got into it as a kid. I started doing it when I was really young, and I did it in part to help people, to help my friends. So that's sort of how it works. Now, let's look at this thing on a dial. Oh, before I do that, notes. Just in case. Okay. Oh, yeah, I did miss some things. Okay. Plus, it's mixed in with my notes for the next video I'm going to be doing. Okay, I did want to point out that she does have Rockefeller in her lineup. She has a Mars ascendant equals Rockefeller. Now, what I'm talking about now, let's go to the dial, because I believe everything that I'm looking at now is on the dial. And a Mars ascendant would mean that the actions of her environment were about making money. If you can, I hope that people can see that. Okay, so you know what the Mars is. It's the actions. You know what the ascendant is, the environment. So it's an environment equals Rockefeller, which is money. Okay. And I'll show you that. So, oh, and along with that is Adamitas. So this is somebody who goes, and I always say this about my own business, it's feast and famine. And I'm looking at this going, oh, it's feast and famine. I do believe that, with Adamitas there, she did have periods where she avoided dealing with her work. There she had periods where she worked, and then periods where maybe she didn't work. And again, not make money. What I thought was really interesting is that it also equals Mars Chronos, which is her actions to be an authority. Okay, so she was also starting to be authority. So let's look at some of this. All right, I got to find. Here we go. Okay. Yes, Adamitas. So you can see the Mars ascendant. Okay, you could see the Volcanus ascendant. There was a lot of pressure, because of the Adamite. So those would be times when things were stopped. And remember, she was arrested 3 times. Blockage, stopped, obstacles. Okay. Her work, love this. Look at this midpoint. Her work, Hestia, we saw it with Vesta, but also Hestia, Alicia. Alicia is, I want to say, it's self-destructive as well. So it was sometimes her own work that caused the stoppages. And that's true. She was you see how perfect this chart is? I love when charts read like this. So she was stopped, and she was stopped. Why? Because her work. Love this stuff. So here we have one of the ascendant Mars, and you can see that her work was the reason for that. Then there's another one. Okay, in here is Rockefeller. Okay, Rockefeller, see, these are the things that I'm thinking Rockefeller, I thought was on here, which means it's in one of the cross points. And let me see if I can find it. I'll have to maybe look it up. I should have written down, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I should have written down the degree points. But of course, I didn't. So let me go look it up. Okay, I put it on Rockefeller because apparently, even when I was editing, I realized I do this. There is an Adamitas here, but it is Adamitas Ascendant and Adamitas Venus that come under Rockefeller, which again is that description that I gave, which is that there were periods when money was tight. She could make her own money. Look at how it equals Niobe. Okay, so there was a great deal of, I want to say probably pride in this endeavor. And the other thing I want to point out is it's running with Apollon. So it's not far away. It's not even a degree away. So her business was successful. She was successful. But I do believe there were periods where she was either stopped from working or there just wasn't enough work. Or she was working on a book and had to wait till it be published. So there's a lot in there. The Saturn, Venus, tight money. The then there was that when you go right to Rockefeller, you get immediately, and we'll go back just to get that back again. So Rockefeller's about there. All right. And now you get the Adamitas Venus. So you see Saturn Venus, Adamitas Venus. So we get that very strongly. Now, moving on, that was one note. Oh, we've got plenty. We also have that there was a lot of karmic pressure to do what she did. So let's go to the sun. All right. So here's Neptune midheaven. She was an astrologer. So Neptune doesn't have, when you're dealing with Neptune and you do something that's metaphysical or spiritual or even related to illnesses, like compassionate work, that right away absorbs that. So her Neptune here, which is very, very strong in the sun axis, is related to her work. She was an astrologer. And unlike Crowley, she didn't do really the other stuff. She was like me. She just did astrology. So, but look at how the sun equals her business. Apollonia, which is this asteroid, which is red like this trans-Neptunian, is with these three stars, which chaos. That's what I've chosen for chaos. So that's my mark for chaos. So look at that. Her work brings chaos. But she feels such a pressure to do it. Such a pressure physically to do this work. And it's faded. Look at the sun between that volcano, which is red like Volcanus, and the hubris. Look at that. It was crazy, but this is what she was meant to do. She knew it. She knew it. Okay, that was really important. So then we have, look at this. Then we have, there we go. All right, the trans-Pluto, which I don't read a lot. It's like the excessive, when there's a lot of excessive. But if you go back to that sun axis, it's highlighted, and it's highlighted along with Apollon. So she has Apollonia, which is the asteroid, and Apollon in the sun axis, which, according to somebody, actually Gary, here we go again, quoting another teacher, that's the golden ticket in life. That when you have a sun with Apollon, and she's got it with both, she really doesn't want for anything. Yes, there may have been moments when her work was stopped and she had a shortage of money, but she really wasn't broke. Okay? She did die during the Depression. Okay, so she was there when the economy started failing. But I bet you she was okay. I bet you she was still okay and still quite successful when a lot of other people were not. Because that Apollon kind of looks out for you. It is like being successful. So that's really wonderful. And sometimes I think the success was too much. And there's the trans-Pluto. I think it was too much responsibility, too much to get done, too much. And I think that comes out also with some of that Adamitas. Because Adamita, especially the stuff that shows up at the midheaven, is not just about specialized work, which would be with Vesta, but it's also about that aversion to work, staying away from work. And I think in this case, it might have been writing to stay away from clients. So she kept herself really busy. And isn't it funny that a lot of the people that have Apollon with the sun are often writers? Okay, it's a way to do that. So, and she really felt pressure to write, by the way. If you look at the sun axis, right there it is, Volcanus Mercury. So those things, that's like a little story in here, you know. So she just had this like, you gotta write. This is why she was here. So, bet you her books were pretty good. I haven't read any of her books. I probably should. I think I would like, because I definitely notice the things that I have in common with her, which are pretty numerous. It's shocking, actually. The sun square moon, I'm sorry, it's a sun opposite moon, and I did talk about it. So here's the moon, and it's literally opposite the in the chart. Okay, so I never really, a sun square is easier for me to read sometimes than a sun opposite moon. Okay, a sun opposite is often a reflective moon, you see, because of the opposition. So it doesn't, to me, it can be difficult, but maybe the square could be tougher. But I do want to point out again that she had an opposition there. What else do I see? At the Aries point, we also see that connection to women. Well, we saw it. I saw all that. I did point that out. But something I didn't point out. Oh, and look at that. Apollon, business stoppage. Apollon Ted Medes. Business is also specialized. Specialized. Getting to the bottom of. Um, there is also in the Aries point, let me see if I can get, there it is. There is a connection, here it is, between, these are also connections, guys. So just so you know, I'm looking at that as well. So look at Rockefeller, again, to Saturn. There's so much there. Oh, she creates a sensation in public. That's what I was looking for. So that would be up here. Let me see. It does this program. One moment. Let me go back. I know it's there. 2205. I'm going to have to go to it directly and then it'll pull it up. Unfortunately, the Ascendant Midheaven don't always make. Oh, I wasn't in the right. Oh, yeah, I was. 22. I did not go far enough. There it is. Okay. Venus Ascendant. Ascendant. Again, the woman thing. I like the Zeus midheaven. Being creative is a part of my identity. It's a part of why I'm here. There's so much I like about this. There should be, there it is. I was going to say, there should be a Uranus Saturn on that. Very first thing, Uranus Saturn. Yeah, she makes a sensation in public. And I didn't even get all the way to the, let me go by minute. Oops, wrong way. There we go. That's exact. Look at that. Zeus, Vesta. Okay. Asteroid midheaven, it's just never over. It's never over. But what I also found interesting was, as I look across the dial, I get this Volcanus within that degree. I would actually say that this is a woman who felt very pushed or inspired from the inside a lot in her life. I think that's, there we go. That was probably a big deal in her life. Look at this. I feel pressure to do a Hates Mars, which is, I think, to do research, to really look at things, to really bring them out and look at how Medusa plays into that, which is she and Toro not far away. Leave her alone, people. Leave her alone when she's working. Holy cow, that's terrific. Stuff like that just tickles me. I like the Neptune Saturn. I'm sorry, Neptune Admetus. I do believe that when she was working and feeling very pressured, she did not have a lot of compassion for you. You could have been bleeding in front of her, but she's got to finish that paragraph. So that's sort of, what I see there. Let me just go through the rest of this, make sure I got everything I wanted to look at. Yeah. Yeah, so again, I had a really good time doing this. I thank you for watching the video, and I'm going to leave it there. So as always, I'm going to wish you only happy reading.